how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 130, and I sat down with Dianne Maroney. She is the founder of the Imagine Project, and she's also an author and a NICU nurse. Dianne is an extraordinary human. She reaches out and helps young kids and teens imagine a better experience, imagine a different way of thinking, imagining a better life, imagining what might be. It's a really cool project. I very much enjoyed talking to Dianne. She's fascinating. Her background is fascinating. And she's just a warm, loving human being. She exemplifies, I think, the kind of people that we need more of in the world. She's definitely making a difference, starting with a very important group of people, our kids, those that will shape our future. As a kid, I would have, I think, really benefited from the Imagine Project, but all things come in their time. So, it is out there now, and that's a wonderful thing. And it's global, which is also a wonderful thing. One thing that I want to mention is that even though the focus, I think, of the Imagine Project is on kids and teens, it also certainly adults can utilize these skills and be a part of this project. It really doesn't have an age boundary at all. And for teachers to understand this project who are influencing our kids, for parents, I think it's really great. And honestly, I don't have children, and so much of what Dianne and I talked about, I think could be used to be a better person for myself, to imagine myself in the world. And I just love that. So please, as you're listening to this preamble and me talking about all this stuff, you hear me talking about, kids and teens, but it's not all that Dianne is doing. Her influence, or I should say the influence of the project, is really a grander scope that goes far beyond kids. I think I'm being redundant now, but I do believe that is an important thing to reiterate. Dianne has written a few books in conjunction with the Imagine Project. She also wrote a children's book called Brian the Caterpillar Who Loved to Imagine, and that's for the younger kids. So a very creative woman, very smart woman. By the way, the links for those books and for the imagineproject.org can all be found on heyhumanpodcast.com. As always, I have links from this episode with Dianne, along with all the other episodes up there. Hey Human Podcast is on social media everywhere, and also my own personal social media, Susan Ruthism, is on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And if you feel like it, you could also go check out susanruth.com. So I have that website as well. Support for Hey Human can be found through the Amazon portal on the heyhumanpodcast.com website. You just go to the website, you click on the portal, and you shop at Amazon the way you normally would, and it helps support Hey Human, which is really awesome. There's also a support button on the main page of the website. Not the Amazon website, but the Hey Human Podcast website. I know that probably gets confusing, even though I try to say it every episode. If you get the chance, please rate and review Hey Human on iTunes. I very much appreciate that as well. Thank you to everyone who has been doing that. And I think that covers it. You can email me, Susan, at heyhumanpodcast.com with comments, questions, suggestions. I had a really great suggestion from someone, Michael, in Los Angeles, and he suggested that on the the descriptors of the episodes, when they come up on the phone, it takes a minute to understand what the episode might be about. So I went through and changed every single descriptor so that the very first few words describe whatever is going to be in the episode. So hopefully that makes things easier for those of you that are just kind of quickie looking for something to listen to, and maybe you're driving, try not to read while you drive, but, you just want to kind of glance down and go, oh, that one looks good. Hopefully that will help. Okay, that's all the businessy stuff. Thank you for listening. Thank you for getting the word out, and I appreciate you. And let's do this. Here we go. Dianne, welcome to Hey Human.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay!
Yay! It's fun.
So you were introduced to me through Frank, your son, who I adore. I think he's a wonderful human being.
Thank you.
And
Me too.
he said, you gotta talk to my mom. She's so interesting, and she's done all this stuff. I was like, well, tell me about it. It was actually when we were painting in here, and so he started telling me a little bit about you and your mission, as it were, and I was really intrigued. So I thought, well, sure, if she'll do it, have her come over. And here you are.
Yeah, here I am from Colorado.
Yeah.
So it's great to be here, and I love Nashville so much.
You do?
I have 2 kids that live here, so it makes it even better to be able to come here so often. So
yeah, although Frank always talks about moving back to Colorado.
Yeah.
So
Colorado's a pretty awesome state, too.
Yeah, I've driven through it when I used to be a touring artist. I remember, because I lived on the West Coast, I remember driving through Colorado and feeling like I was in a snow globe in my van, watching the snow come down and having that weird snow globe thing.
You get it just right.
Driving
it doesn't
at
happen
night.
that often, yeah. It's a beautiful state, has wonderful weather, and
yeah,
it's good stuff.
Hey, any place that Mork and Mindy would live.
Yeah, there you go. Boulder.
Yeah.
Of course. It's a unique place, too.
Yeah. So let's go backwards a little bit. You are a mom. You also are an author. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, I'm actually a nurse by trade and with a master's in mental health. And I used to work with premature infants in the NICU. And then my daughter, who's 25 now, was born at 1 pound, 12 ounces.
Which is crazy.
So, yeah, it's crazy.
How early is that?
That's about 4 months early, 26 weeks.
What is the survival rate of somebody?
It's low. I mean, I don't know exactly anymore, but I think it was about 50% risk at the time, with a high percentage of disabilities. So it was pretty traumatizing for her and for me and for us as a family. And so I saw the trauma in prematurity, and nobody talked about it at that time. It was like, take them home and treat them like a regular baby. I told that to many moms. And then I realized, wow, this is really a lot harder than I thought. So there was a lot of trauma there. So I went back to school, got my master's, and started learning about how to help kids with trauma. And I started speaking to nurses and doctors and parents about, the trauma of prematurity, writing articles. And I knew that if I stood in front of a crowd and told them my story, they would just think it was my story, just because I was a NICU nurse. So I asked this is the beginning of the internet. I asked a whole bunch of parents to tell me their story using the word imagine so that I could read them as I spoke. And turns out we were all sobbing and reading each other's stories and felt a lot of healing from it. So I did that for a long time. And then in 2010, I decided one day when I just kind of became so aware of the world was feeling, sunken, and there was a lot of struggles. And so I thought, well, how can I inspire the world as best I can? So I started traveling across the United States, meeting and interviewing ordinary people with extraordinary stories. And I asked them to tell me their story using the word imagine. So I did that, and I created a book called The Imagine Project, Stories of Courage, Hope, and Love, which I have a copy of for you today. But
oh, I'm so excited.
That Frank will give you. Okay. But anyway, it's a photography, coffee table book. It's really a beautiful book. And then, so all these people wrote their stories using the word imagine. And when the book came out, people were like, wow, that was such a healing experience. The people in the book felt like it was a healing experience. People who read it felt like it was a healing experience. So then I thought, okay, well, this is really powerful. What's the next step? What can I do with this? And I asked a friend who was an 8th grade science teacher, who's a teacher out in a suburb of Denver. I said, can you see if your 8th grade students can write their story using the word imagine? And he did. And in a classroom of 28 kids, just an average suburb school, there was stories of, bullying or loss or feeling left out or, pretty deep, some deep stories, some typical, what you might think were typical stories. But what was really concerning as a story out of a classroom of 28 kids, 3 kids talked about suicide. And I was like, oh dear, we have an issue here, and at that point in time, and still is, the suicide rate for teens and kids was going up and is still going up. So I thought, okay, what can we do with this? So I continued on. I went into any school that I could and talked about the project, had them write their story, any place that would have me, and I started even to go to other states. And then ended up developing a process that's a 7-step process that helps kids to write their story using the word imagine. So every sentence begins with the word imagine, which is really, really powerful. And then...
is that to promote empathy? I imagine
it's really unique, and I don't think I've figured it out 100% yet what that word does, but what I think it does is it helps the person who's writing step back from their story and have empathy for themselves. And then who's ever reading it has empathy for them as well. Mm-hmm. So it asks you to...
It's a call to action.
Yeah, it's a call to hear what I'm saying, hear my voice, hear what's the stories in my head, hear how I'm feeling, and this has been really hard. And then when the person writes it, and particularly if they read it out loud in a group or a classroom, then there's like this transformation. It's like, wow, I don't know, there's something really big about it. And they're able to be just a little bit more subjective. It's like a little bit safer than if you just tell your story. If someone stands up and tells their story using the word imagine, it's not as triggering. If you stand up and just tell your story, everybody gets sucked into the story, particularly the person telling them, and they can go down a rabbit hole of a lot of emotion that's really hard to pull out of.
It's interesting that it creates a separation of sorts. Why do you think that might be?
Well, one of my theories is that it not only, when you read and write, you're using the left side of your brain, the more intellectual side of your brain. But when you're using the word imagine, it pulls in the creative side of your brain. So it has both sides of your brain working at the same time. And being an artist, that there's a lot of healing in artistic work. So it pulls in both of those sides. It's not just your intellect, but also your artistic side. So I think that's one of the things that happens. Yeah.
So going backwards a little bit, you were already a NICU nurse before you had a premature baby. Mm-hmm. That's extraordinary in its own way, isn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty tough. I mean, I think in some ways it was, easier for me. In some ways it was harder because I understood everything that was going on. But what happened was I became hooked on what I knew could happen. Like the fears of what was possible. I knew more than the average parent of what was the negative part of what was possible. And so I became kind of obsessed with that and, turned into a nurse instead of a mom because that's how I knew to function better than being a mom.
And I've met your daughter, and she is a fully realized human being in every sense of the word, and in fact also a creative as your son is. And you have another child as well.
Yes.
So you said the trauma I imagine, and watching some of the videos that you did, I'm trying to picture a pound.
It's about the size of a Pepsi can.
That is nutty.
My husband's ring would fit over her leg, wedding ring. So that's how tiny her legs were. And it's hard to imagine. It's hard for me to even imagine now. But it's pretty tiny. And the fear that comes along with that, it's like more like terror, that, oh my God, is she gonna be okay? Are we gonna be okay? What's the future hold? There's a lot of trauma in that. Do
you have to keep a child in an incubator for a really long time? Is that how that? Yeah.
It's sometimes it's an open bed, and then eventually they get into an incubator. If they're really sick, then they're in a bed where everybody can reach them right away, and then they get into a incubator as they begin to grow.
Do you think that the body retains the memory of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
100%.
I do too.
Yeah. And so that's part of what I teach when I teach teachers or counselors or someone is how, because I believe that every experience, positive and negative, has an energetic imprint in who we are. So when we're trying to heal, we don't just address the intellectual part. We don't just address the emotional part. We also should address the energetic imprint. Because if you can let go of the energetic imprint, there's faster and deeper healing. So, and you do that through techniques like emotional freedom technique, also called EFT or tapping.
Which I've done.
Yeah, it's a great tool.
Awesome.
Amazing tool. So I try to teach teachers and counselors how to use that, and as part of the Imagine process.
Now your focus is primarily on the kids and even educating the teachers on how to deal with the kids. But you also have adults in part of the project, correct? Because some of the videos
that was the original. The original was more of the adults, and then I tried to. Now I'm just focusing on kids and teens. Teaching teachers how to do it with kids and teens, because that's the way that I can reach the most kids, is through classrooms.
Does your educating begin with the teacher, however, so that they understand the ramification, how it feels, and what's going to come up, and then...
Right. Well, in a typical classroom, there's still trauma. I mean, this research shows that 50% of white, educated, middle-class people in America go through at least one traumatic experience before the age of 17. So the trauma is there, and then you add in poverty, crime, or, some really intense scenarios, at-risk scenarios, and you're up to about 100%.
People of color, of course, those kids.
Those kids, and, so in a typical classroom, there may or may not be some really big stories, but they can still be, it can be a smaller story, but still be really impactful in the child. So it's really important I tell teachers the most important thing is that they just see the child without their story. That they hear their story, they hear it, and that with their eyes they show compassion. But their heart, they can't get pulled into the emotional part of it. And they can cry with them a little bit, but they got to pull themselves out of it, because it doesn't do the child any good if they just see them with their story. It's important for them to see them without their story, and how amazing they are, and the strength that they have, and the resilience that they have. Underneath that story is a whole wonderful human being, and it's the teacher or the counselor's job to show that child that person is there.
How do you do that?
It's tricky. You do it by just, I have tricks that I do yesterday I was speaking to some counselors in Colorado, big conference, and one of the teachers, I had them write their story, which is really powerful. It's a way for them to understand the process. And one of the teachers stood up and read a story about losing her child. And it wasn't a baby, it was a child. I don't know what happened, but the family was there, and she told the story of that, and man, was it hard for me not to cry, because it was a big story. And but I could, so I felt my emotion, and then I used a technique called Ho'oponopono, or the 0 point. It's a technique that's a Hawaiian statement or prayer, whichever way you want to look at it. And you say, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, as many times as you need to.
That gives me the shivers.
Yeah, it's a really powerful neutralizing energy. So if I start to feel emotion when someone's reading their story, I go to that. And I just keep saying it in my head, and it helps me to be grounded, and it helps me to not take on that person's energy, because, it's beautiful for me to be compassionate, and that's what I'm supposed to be. But it doesn't help that person if I fall into this, this heavy, sad place where I feel so much compassion for them. I can't be strong for them anymore. Does that make sense?
Yes, it reminds me of I can't remember the first place I heard this parable, but about the man in the pit. And there's a man in the pit, and he's yelling, help me get out of the pit, and all these different people crawl down into the pit, and then they're in the pit.
Right.
And finally, somebody comes along and throws them a rope, and they crawl out, and they said, how did you know to throw a rope? And the person responds, because I was once in the pit, and someone threw me a rope.
That's so perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about. And, it's hard because, if we have a similar story or anything that triggers us that somebody talks about, and we can feel that same emotion within ourselves from our past experiences, it's very hard not to go there. But that's a trick that I use. In mindfulness, meditation, clearing our own stuff, it's important to clear our own stuff.
Well, I was just going to say, it's almost dancing on a tightrope of ego. If you telling me your story and I get sucked into it and I start feeling it, that my pain and suffering is almost becomes the thing instead of supporting your pain and suffering, and then it's no longer...
Yeah, it's no longer support. It becomes about me or about the person that's holding the space instead of that person. And that doesn't... I had a really dear friend that you would absolutely love say to me once, when you go to someone's funeral and you hug them, you don't want to dump your sorrow on them. You want to hug them with love and hope, and it's going to be okay, kind of a hug. Not, oh my God, I feel so sad for you, because you're just dumping your own energy on them. So that's not what this is about. This is about showing kids that they don't have to be their story. And if you dump your own story onto them while you're listening to theirs, then they don't know what to do with it. They just feel worse. So you have to practice. And some people are natural at that, at just being supportive and loving. But there are, people with more background of trauma are going to have a harder time with it.
If they haven't done the work.
If they haven't done the work.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What happens in these scenarios when a child who's already vulnerable, obviously, when they say something that something's happening to them on a criminal level, then what do you do? The who's ever listening has a responsibility to report it. And that's a fear of, I get asked that all the time from teachers and counselors. Well, what if they say something that we have to report? I said, well, would you rather just leave it pushed under the rug? What if you're going to save them from something? So it's their choice. And when I do with kids, particularly high schoolers, I tell them nobody's going to read this story unless you want them to. So they can write whatever they want, whatever kind of words they want to use that they may not use, like cuss words or whatever they may not use if they knew somebody was reading it. And if you tell them that you're not going to read their story, then don't read their story, because you might find out something that you really don't want to know. And I've had that happen in a classroom before, an alternative school. The teacher freaked out and read all the stories and ended up having to call a bunch of parents. So yeah, honor that. It's their story, and they can process it the way they want to, but you're just giving them the opportunity to process it. There may be things, but it doesn't happen as... Usually you pretty much know what's going on in a home. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Maybe
enough, these days.
Yeah, enough that... And you may find out things, I'll tell a story that I can't use any names, but I was in a school that works with really high-risk kids about a month ago. And there was a group of about 5 kids in the room. There was a boy who was just dear, as he was about a sophomore, I think, freshman or sophomore. Just a dear soul. You just wanted to hug him. You just liked him immediately. And he wrote his story like crazy. Typically, he doesn't write. So when I asked him to start writing his imagined story, he was just writing like crazy. And there was counselors there, because these kids are at risk. So they had a few extra counselors there. And he was writing, and all the other kids read their stories out loud. So he said, well, I guess I should read mine. I feel pressure to do that. His story was about, imagine waking up thinking about killing someone every day. Imagine your family telling you should be a serial killer. And we were all kind of, whoa, that was a pretty big story. And then he said, I regret reading that out loud, because he heard how big the story was in his head. He'd never said it out loud like that. So he didn't realize, wow, this is a big thing that I'm thinking about. And the counselors knew some of the story, but they found out more about his family through that story. So they were able to really directly do some therapy with him around some of the stuff that came up. So it's powerful, and he was able to move forward. So, could have even saved a life or two.
Yeah, I mean, as banal a statement this is, it seems to be true that when we are able to actually face our shadow, acknowledge our shadow, it
dissipates it a
bit. It lets it go away to some degree. We all have a shadow, all of us. Some, of course, a little more volatile than others, but...
Well, I can tell you the same kid, I should know the positive side of it, is that, so that's the third step, is to write your story. 7 steps. Third step is to write your story using the word imagine. The fourth step is, okay, what do you want instead? What story do you want instead? Write an imagined story and turn that around. And so he said, I don't know what I want. I'm stuck in my life. I don't know. It's just a mess trying to figure out what to do instead. And I said, well, are there any sports that you really like? And he's, no. I said, well, are there any people in your life you really respect? He said, only one that I hate too. And I said, well, would you like to help someone who's like you someday? And he lit up. He said, yes, I would. And I said, well, how do you think you might do that? I don't know how to do that. How do I do that? How do I do that? I said, well, you can become a teacher or a counselor. And so he was like, okay. And he started writing it. Imagine being a teacher. Imagine being a counselor. And he started to cry. And he said, I'm crying. I haven't cried in 14 years. I'm not supposed to cry. And it was just a moment of him seeing possibility. And he did become kind of confused after. I mean, he really needed some therapy after that because of his scenario was pretty big. But they were able to do it because they saw it and they helped him work through a very vulnerable point in his world. I had a girl similar to him in a downtown Denver in a gang. She was stuck in a gang. She was in middle school, I think, 8th grader, and she's writing, all about how she was stuck in a gang. They were going to kill somebody in her family if she wasn't in the gang. And I said, when we got to the imagined possibility, she's like, I don't know, I'm stuck. I can't do anything else. I have to be in this gang or they're going to hurt somebody. And I said, well, why don't you write down, imagine not being in a gang. Okay. So she wrote down that. And I said, imagine no one getting hurt. She said, okay. And then she wrote on one of her own, she said, imagine being myself. And so she moved forward, and she saw that she didn't have to be that. But when we're stuck in a big-time trauma, a big-time scenario, as a child particularly, and we don't know how to get out, we have to find a way to see the possibility, and that's what the Imagine Project does more than anything.
So what are some of the other steps?
The fourth step is writing the Imagine Possibilities. The fifth step is transforming the Imagine Possibilities into I statements. You finish the sentence, I am, I can, I will, for each possibility. So I am smart enough to get good grades. I can get good grades. I will graduate from high school. And then the sixth step is what do you have to do to make your dreams happen? 3 things, because they need to know that it's their job, nobody else's. And then the seventh step is 30-day challenge to write down 3 things you're grateful for every day, 3 things you want to imagine in your life, and do 1 act of kindness every day to try to change the way they think and see the world. Because we know that gratitude and goals changes brain function. So, and the first 2 steps are what do you love about your life, and then what's been challenging for you in your life. Reflect on what's been hard. And then you take one of the reflect and you write the imagined story about it. So,
have you encountered kids that are just so opposed to being a part of it? How do you break through with them?
What I've seen, because oftentimes, particularly in an alternative school, there's high school particularly, alternative high schools are kids that can't go to a regular school. And so there's almost always one in the classroom that sits there with their arms crossed saying, I'm not doing this. This is effing stupid. And then they're just angry. And so I just let them be. I don't force them or anything. But then when they hear the part where some of the kids read their stories out loud, they start to see, oh, I'm not the only one with this story. And you can see them shift a little bit. And they may still be acting like they're mad, but I can see that it's making an impact. And, there's one girl, she was so mad one time, and she was like, throwing stuff, just tossing stuff on her table and stuff, acting like she was really mad. And she had to leave. And I give the kids, when I go to an alternative school, one of the big books that has the original stories in it. And she had to leave to go do something. She came back and got her book. So I know. And she deserved it. She'd been to like 12 foster homes. She'd been through a lot. So she deserved to be angry. And there was no reason why she should trust me. You know, I mean, she didn't know me. So but if she sat and read that book, she might know that she could be okay. So that's
she's not alone.
Yeah, she's not alone.
Yeah, so. I mean, pain certainly is a universal feeling, as is fear.
It definitely is.
And fear counts on itself to not let you get rid of the pain, you know, because then it gets to turn to hate, and that's also powerful.
Yeah, and she was definitely full of hate.
Yeah.
And
which translates to being full of fear.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was another little 5th grade boy in a just sort of average middle school or elementary school in the suburb, and he, in a room full of all the 5th graders in the school, he stood up and read, they were all reading their story, and he stood up and read a story about losing his dad when he was young, and he'd moved 6 times in the last 2 years. He just moved to this school, and he didn't fit in because he was quiet, and he just, was tired of trying to fit in. And none of the kids knew his story. They didn't know that about him. And when they found out, they rallied, and they became friends with him. They said, come play with me. And it didn't just last for a week, it lasted for the rest of the year. And so imagine how that changed the trajectory of his life.
Yeah.
And, when I first started doing this, I was really afraid that there'd be bullying a lot in the classroom. If somebody heard a story, then they'd make fun of you or bully them about it, and that has been the exact opposite. Kids are so compassionate, and when they hear that they're not alone, there's this deep-seated need to help somebody. And I think it's a human need. And when they see that somebody else is got a story that's like theirs or what they perceive as being harder than theirs, then they really want to go help that person.
It's the tribe of pain.
It is the tribe of pain.
Tribalism is so powerful on so many levels, and it encompasses a huge range of emotions. And I mean, we're seeing it especially right now. The tribalism of pain is politics.
True. Yes. Right? Very much so. People are just pulling together, and part of that is fear, that you...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, is fear and trying to find somebody who thinks and feels and can help you or feels the same as you. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, about 7th grade, so my family, I grew up on this long street, and across the street from all the houses was a huge amount of woods. And so the kids in the neighborhoods from both sides, because it was so big, it took up sort of many blocks. And the kids would congregate in the woods and run around and climb trees and go on adventures and all that stuff. But I remember that there was a misfit group of mine, of girls, and like one came from an affluent family, one came from a single mom family, one had a mom and a stepdad. The stepdad was terrible. There was me with my parents still together, but mental illness with my mother, just like all this stuff. And we would sit together until the sun would go down, the tall grass getting eaten by mosquitoes and things, and talk about our stuff, just things going on. And it was, I think, a very good feeling to know you weren't alone. And
absolutely.
Even though all of our stories, the stuff that I heard was just...
Yes, I'm sure it was mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing,
to hear.
Especially as a kid, because you don't have anywhere to put it.
Right.
You don't know how to stop it. All you can do is be there for each other. Yeah.
And I think it's the kids that don't have that tribe, that group of friends, that are the ones that end up in a place where they either want to hurt somebody or they hurt themselves.
And gangs and hate groups and all these things, they prey particularly. And in some cases, religion.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely, I agree.
And I know that I would get arguments for that, like, how do you equate religion to a gang? But it's they're looking for that same vibe.
They are. Yeah, some people are definitely who are like that. I was just going to say something and I forgot. There was many kids tell me that that one of the things that they feel like the Imagine Project helps them with is not feeling alone. And because they hear their story, and it's really adorable. Oftentimes in a classroom, somebody reads a story and some other child will get up and give them a big hug, just because they know they need it. And hopefully there's someone healthy enough, or, just with that perception that it's needed to do that. And then the child feels heard. And, the work that you do, we all just want to feel heard.
Yeah.
And that's what the Imagine Project does. So it's pretty cool.
It's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. And it's weird. My personal belief, I believe in something bigger than myself. I do believe we're all connected. I believe in, the many lives, many masters type of philosophy. And I think about, the moment when you found out that your daughter was going to be, born prematurely, and then that series of events, and then what that has now become.
Absolutely.
Is extraordinary.
Well, it's actually started before my daughter. So I don't know if Frank told you anything about my story, but I have a really big childhood story.
Oh, no, I don't know.
So I came from a family that was, shouldn't be together, shouldn't have been together. Mm-hmm. My dad was an abusive alcoholic to my mom, not to me. I tell the story as I was left home alone when I was really young. I had pretty crappy boyfriends that, emotionally forced me into sex. And I was part of a gang when I don't look like it at all, but I was.
What kind of gang?
It was a silly gang. I mean, not silly, but it was the era of desegregation. So we fought each other not knowing, who the other one was. And then this was in middle school, because it was at a time where the desegregation, kids were bused from one part of town to the other. We didn't know each other. We were a different color. We thought the other one was bad. So we fought each other. And then at the end of ninth grade, which was the end of middle school at that time, we met each other. We accidentally ran into each other downtown at a Woolworths store. I don't even know if they still have Woolworths, but... And
your gang and the rival gang?
Yeah. And we were like, and I was like, I think I want to go talk to them. I want to know who they are. So I went over and sat down, and we started talking, and we became friends. And then we never saw each other again after that, because we all went to different high schools. But it was a pretty ugly time, we fought with our fists and, pulled hair, and there was a lot of big school issues that went on, and we didn't name ourselves, but they named us the Blondies, which was really silly. It sounds like such a stupid gang, but it really was the gangs of that era. And
very West Side Story.
Yeah, it's so silly. But then I found my mom from suicide. She committed suicide when I was 15.
Oh my.
So that was a really big impact, and that was major trauma. So I had a childhood filled with a lot of turmoil and then trauma. So I think it's in my heart to want to help kids, because if I would have had somebody who would have allowed me to share my story, make sure that's turned off, I would have not had to go through years of, 40 years of trying to heal myself. So...
Well, with every child you help, you're healing yourself,
absolutely.
Right?
This thing has been hugely healing for me. And
I think it alters one's DNA.
Yes.
And I know this is going to sound nuts, but I do believe that when we help others, not only do we alter our DNA, but we're also altering ancestral DNA.
Absolutely.
I think it goes backwards.
And the energy of the world.
Yes.
I think we're altering the energy of the world by helping. And there's an energy, a power bigger than me that's behind the Imagine Project. And it's a beautiful power, and I can feel it, I see it. Every time I've wanted to quit, which has been many, many times, it's like I'm shown something beautiful that comes from it, so that pushes me to keep going. And I no longer want to quit. I mean, it's now in it. That was when it was trying to create it, but I'm in it, and I see the beauty of it all the time, and so it's pretty cool, but there is something bigger than me behind it. And I do see it. I got an email from a fifth grade teacher from a school in Belleville, Illinois. I have no idea where that is, but I think it's a town of I looked it up, it's about 50,000 people. And she loved it so much that she shared it with a bunch of teachers, and then she presented it to their school board. So they're all the whole district is doing it. And there's so much love with it. I mean, it's really about love. So it's really having a very loving impact in the world. And I'm really proud of that.
Amen to that.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that.
I believe in the Church of Love.
That's perfect. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So how do people listening, that I know there's teachers listening for sure, but there may be youth groups or, church groups, all those kinds of things. How do they get involved with this?
It's free. That's the other thing. It's
free is good.
Free is good. So there's a website.
It's the coin of the realm.
Yes, that's true. TheImagineProject.org. Make sure you put the in front of it because there's another Imagine Project that doesn't have the.
Okay. The Imagine Project.
Yeah, .org. And you download the journals. They're free to download. They're also available in Spanish. So, and then you just have your kids do it. And you really don't have to use the 7 steps. You can just sit down and start writing your story using the word imagine. But keep going until it flips to the positive.
And I would encourage adults as well.
There's an adult journal.
Good.
So, yes.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Because Lord knows the pain is real
it's
for it.
Real. And we all have it, and it's really amazing. And I want it to be a tool that everybody can use for their whole life. There's so much research on expressive writing or free writing. It says that it makes you healthier. It boosts your immune system. It helps with PTSD symptoms. It lowers blood pressure, and then for kids, it shows that it increases grade point averages, decreases dropout rates, helps with writing, and it makes kids want to write more because they find their voice. So there's so many good things that happen, and it's not about grammar, it's not about punctuation. And in a classroom, it shouldn't be about that first, and then if the teacher really wants to, they can develop it into a stronger writing thing after they do their first voice part of it. But so it can be part of any literacy curriculum in a school, classroom, and it goes along with core standards if that's what the school follows. So yeah, it's just easy. And then I've written a few books. So my latest book is The Imagine Project, Empowering Kids to Rise Above Drama, Trauma, and Stress. And all of my books are available on Amazon. And
I'll put links on HeyHumanPodcast.com.
And on my website, but it's probably easier through Amazon. And then, and it's, that's it. It's that simple. And I wrote a children's book called Byron the Caterpillar Who Loves to Imagine for the little bitty ones that really can't, write their stories yet. So it's not until about first, maybe second grade that kids can grab a hold of the concept of writing a sentence beginning with the word imagine. So the children's book is to help the kids younger than that. So. And the book is also available in Spanish now. So
it's really interesting to me to hear about your childhood because I only met your daughter once, so I don't have a good barometer there other than she was lovely.
Yeah.
And shy. But Frank, who I feel like I know pretty well, having had many a conversation with him, and he is such a loving and giving human being.
Thank you.
And so to know that from one generation to the next, which isn't very far, that has transpired speaks volumes about you, and I'm sure your husband, who I have not met, but
I can tell you we've done a lot of healing in our family, and I'm very active in saying, here's some healing tools. Go see somebody if you need to. We do something called classical homeopathy, which is really powerful in healing. So my book, the new book, has all the description of alternative therapies in the back that we've used, and a lot of it is based in energy healing, and there's also a chapter on if you want more traditional, this is what you can do. If you want less traditional, this is what you can do. Because I have I'm a nurse, but I think alternative, and because I don't like medication, none of us are on medications or anything. We all do everything, eat healthy, vitamins, and do energetic healing a lot. So I think that's key, honestly, because there was a lot of healing that had to be done. There was trauma there from Mackenzie for all of us, and for her, for the whole family. set us off on she was really sick for about 5 years.
Well, it's got to be scary. She's the littlest, the youngest.
She's the youngest.
Yeah, so for the older siblings, especially boys, and the understanding of men are supposed to be caretakers, that's all also in our DNA, right? This sort of weird,
absolutely,
I don't want to say hierarchy, but that feeling of what's supposed to be, or
Yeah.
And so for them to look at her, probably that sense of helplessness.
Well, also, sweet Michael is the middle child, and he's just as sweet as Frank. And he was 3, so he got lost in the shuffle.
Sure.
And because everything was focused on Mackenzie. And so both of them kind of lost the ability to be front and center, both Frank and Michael. And so that was really hard. That was a point in time where they really needed more attention, but instead Mackenzie got it all. So those are impacts there, but I know that, and so we've really worked hard at shifting that. And I will say to parents out there, if your child is struggling, do the work on yourself, because if you heal yourself, that's at least 50% of the battle for your child, if not more.
Yes, because we're constantly mirroring each other.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at it from an energetic standpoint, then if you change the energy of the dynamic between you and your child, if you change your part of that energy, they're forced to change. Because it doesn't match their energy anymore. So they have to shift, and they'll get the cue from you. Oh, well, they might fight it a little bit, but eventually they'll be given the opportunity to grow. So in my book, I'll just say, that there's so many ways that you can use for healing for yourself and for your kids that's non-traditional, because research shows that talk therapy doesn't do a whole lot other than helps you understand it better. And you need more to really heal.
Yeah,
so.
I'm a big fan of the energetic healing modalities. I think they're miracles in their own right.
Yes.
And it's funny though, my dad, who's a scientist, we have these conversations, and he playfully teases me about, my witch doctors or whatever that he likes to say. And but we have really good, deep conversation about it. And I saw a movie the other night, The Man of Tai Chi. And, it was a bad guy, a good guy, lots of martial arts. But martial arts is a great example of how energy has power.
Yes.
Because the smallest motion in martial art has a great impact. And I think that's a great, especially for people who are like, oh, what is this weird voodoo you talk about energy healing? Look to something that is clearly, people are making 20 boards with their hand. That's a focused energy.
Well, if you want to look at it from more of a traditional standpoint, so Dr. Bessel van der Kolk is the father of trauma. He's the one that really first started to study PTSD and trauma. He has a book out there called The Body Keeps Score. And in his book, he talks a lot about how when we connect to the felt sense or the awareness of what's in our body with negative emotion, or the trauma impact, once we connect to that, we're able to move it through better and let go of that. So yoga, the research on yoga shows that yoga is better than antidepressants for helping with depression, because it moves out energy. Anybody that's done yoga knows when you're done, you've let go of so much energy that you're able to really relax and be with yourself from a different state. And I use yoga a lot. My kids not so much, but I wish they'd do it more. They will someday. But a little bit they use it.
I saw a panelist the other day it was a mental health panel. It was really fascinating. And one of the therapists, I cannot recall her last name, her first name is Vanessa. I really enjoyed her. I asked her to be on the show, in fact, so she's going to be on an upcoming episode. I'm very excited about that. But she talked about a study that was done at Duke University that involved people with mental illness, and they gave them, there was 3 groups. There was the group that was on medicine. There was the group that was on medicine and exercise 3 times a week. I think she said, the 30-minute, 45-minute cardio type exercise, aerobic exercise. And then the third group was on the placebo medicine and the exercise. And the 2 groups that were on the medicine all had issues with re-trauma, sinking back into depression and the bipolar roller coaster of emotion. The group that was on the placebo that never took any medicine and maintained that exercise regimen never had the dips or any of the high lows anymore.
That's really fascinating.
The exercise regulated their emotions.
Absolutely. I know a gentleman that was pretty sad. He lost someone to suicide that was very close to him, a girlfriend, I think, and he was on like tons of medication and really struggling, and thoughts of suicide. And then he started doing yoga. Somebody challenged him, try a yoga class. And he's off of about $700 worth of medicine a month. He's so fit and so grounded and so healthy because he does yoga about 5 times a week.
Which is $1,200 a month. No.
Yeah, right. No, but I mean, packages and such. Yeah, but this is in a small town. But anyway, true. But he's healthy. The medication was just suppressing that emotion. And so it's really, medication, that's what it does. It gives your body the ability to cope, your mind the ability to cope, but it's through suppression, it's not through healing.
Well, it's that same idea as when we shove the shadow down and we don't acknowledge that it exists, it's still there. And then it'll rear its ugly head in bizarro ways. But if you actually sit down and have coffee with your shadow and be like, all right, what's the deal?
Yeah.
Let's talk this out.
That's right. Do you know the artist Travis Meadows? He's a country artist. Yeah. He has a song called "If You Push It Down, It Comes Out Sideways," which is such a great song.
Yeah,
and it's
a great
true.
way to put it.
Yeah, and it does. And I tell people that a lot. If you push it down, it'll come out as illness, physical illness, or mental illness.
Yeah.
And it can shorten your lifespan. It can make your life miserable. So you can't push it down. It's got to come out. And that's what the Imagine Project does for kids. Is it helps them to not push it down, but instead express it, let it come up, and move through it.
And it also, I feel, likely allows the space to people not fearing what is going to be said. Because that's the other component, right?
Yeah.
Like if you voice, I've had that experience. I remember it was right around when Robin Williams killed himself. And I remember being really, God, I was devastated by that. Which
so sad.
Celebrity deaths they're a bummer and all that stuff. But for
his
some,
was.
yeah, and I think because of what he represented in the world, this light, even we all know that the people that are the clowns are the ones that have the most pain.
Right.
But I remember being in a really dark place in that time, not because of the Robin Williams, but in that same arc of time, feeling, and then that happened, and I thought, oh, maybe it's not just me. Other people are going through this too. And I remember telling my roommate, I voiced how I was feeling. I was like, gosh, I feel so dark. I'm not really feeling anything. I don't know what's going on. There's, this is sort of flatlining. And I don't see what the point is, and I'm articulating it, and all the while in my mind going, well, I know if I talk about it, I can see the other side of it.
Yeah.
I'm not there, and it may take a minute to get there, but I can talk about all these things I'm feeling, and know that eventually I'll get over there. Anyway, I voiced this to her, and she panicked, and she called my boyfriend at the time, and my best friend, and she, I'm sure she would have, if she could have figured out how to get a hold of my parents, she probably would have. And she was so scared with the information.
Right.
And I mean, bless her heart, as they say, for that.
Right.
But I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because if we can't just say, this is what I'm feeling.
It is a problem. Yeah. And that's why,
And they all panicked. Yeah. Everybody, I was like, what is going on? Why is there such...
I was just saying
just saying.
Yeah. Well, I think, with the Imagine Project, that's why not every teacher necessarily should do the Imagine Project with their kids if they're not able to just let them speak their truth and let them continue. I think when I go into a classroom and do it, one of the worst things teachers can do is pull the kids out if they're really upset. Because I say, leave them here, let them go. Let them cry a little bit. They'll move through it because that's part of what they're supposed to do. But if somebody panics and doesn't let the child continue to move forward and through it, then they're stuck. I mean, there's no way to do that.
And there's the shame around feeling like what you've said or done is somehow bad or wrong.
Yeah. Imagine when that little boy or that young man that read that story that I mentioned, if everybody would have panicked for him, that would have been horrific. But instead they went, wow, we didn't know you had all these thoughts in your head. Let's talk about it. And then he was able to sort through it better.
Yeah, it's far more dangerous to not speak what's going on in there. I think that should be far more concerning to the people that don't talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've gone into correctional schools where they're there ordered by the court.
Like juvenile detention.
Yeah. And schools, and they have, stories that make you want to throw up. They're so big. And they can see, wow, look at how resilient I am. Look at what I've done, and I don't have to be that, and share it with their cohorts. And there's videos on my website, by the way, of some of those kids sharing. I'd recommend that people want to watch the videos. They're really powerful.
Yeah. I'll make sure that link is also available.
Okay, because it's it's amazing to watch, and you really see the power of it.
And it also allows the tribe. It allows, if you're watching that,
tribe.
It gives you permission to feel and to say and to cry and to, the human's resilience quotient is really extraordinary. What we are capable of enduring it's
incredible.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody's watching the Humans of New York thread right now, but it's from, is it Uganda that had the genocide? Holy man.
That's one of the places.
You read those stories and you're like, I cannot believe these people lived through what they... And I hear stories like you can't believe.
Sure.
And yet they're still sitting there and they're still saying it. And some people think that about me, but I don't even... My story's mild compared to some of the stories that I hear. Isn't that
interesting? I when I talk about my history and people's like, oh, how did you... And I think, oh my God, there's way worse. Way worse. And it's funny, even that, how we put things on a scale of horrifying to just bad, where every individual is also entitled to their catastrophe. Yeah.
There's something about the human condition. When I worked in the NICU with preemies, there could be the sickest preemie in the unit, where we knew as nurses that baby was really, really sick. And that mom might be sitting next to their baby, but yet they look over at another baby that might look sicker than their baby to them, and they feel bad for that other parents. They feel that maybe it's easier for them to feel that for them than it is for themselves. But there's something about the human condition that helps us if there's somebody near us or that we see that's had a more difficult story than us, and it helps us to get through ours. So, and that's what happens.
Otherwise, Instagram wouldn't exist, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever. Yeah, or Facebook. Or,
right.
Yeah, I mean, our stories are what define us, I suppose.
We learn so much from our stories.
Yeah, but one of the most I'm assuming that this happens with you as well, is when I do this sit down with people and have conversations about their lives, that every single person that sits down with me, I see me in some way or another. Yes, absolutely. Even in the people I don't agree with, even in people that are like, whoa, how did you become who you are? There's always a moment where I go, oh, there I am. There I am. I see me. I see. And
we're more alike than we think.
I mean, yes.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. It's the beauty of our... I like to tell kids that my story defined me for a long time. It taught me a lot of things about myself that I didn't. More of what I didn't want to be, and it helped me decide what I do want to be. So I think there's so much about each other that we can learn in ourselves about what we want in life and what we don't want in life. And just look around and take note of, I don't want that anymore, so what do I want instead? But you really have to think about, what do you want instead? You have to think about that, or else you'll stay stuck in what is.
And complacency is still fear.
It is. It is. And I do walk into classrooms where it's really complacent, where it's, and those are the hardest classrooms, I think. alternative schools that, they've become complacent.
Yeah.
So, but there's always, anything's possible. I do believe that. I mean, I have a daughter was born at 1 pound, 12 ounces, who's amazing and healthy and,
and beautiful.
And I survived my scenario. I think anything's possible.
Yeah.
So you can never give up on that hope.
Amen.
Never. Amen.
TheImagineProject.org. Thank you, Dianne.
Thank you so much.
It was really a pleasure.
Thank you. Mine too.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.